Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we're going to be getting our AI to follow us and navigate around the world, avoiding obstacles and just generally being a little bit of an annoying nuisance. Let's dive in and see how this is possible. So the next most obvious piece of the puzzle that we need to sort out here is getting our AI to move towards us. It's no good them just standing there. They also need to move, and then they'll need to shoot. First of all, let's figure out how we can do movement. Now, when you're moving with AI needs to know about obstacles. It needs to do something called pathfinding, because say I'm hiding down in this corridor here and it wants to get to me. It needs to know that it can't just move through the wall. It's going to need to plan its route to come around the obstacles and come towards me. Now, the way this typically works in games in general, and specifically here in Unreal, is that we generate a mesh which tells us where is walkable within a level. And then using various algorithms, one of which is called A-star pathfinding, you can navigate on this mesh and create a route plan, and the AI then uses this route plan to move along. So that's the kind of outline of the process. Fortunately, a lot of that is done for us. We don't have to code this from scratch. So what we need to do is, first of all, be able to see the nav mesh. And at the moment, we can't see a nav mesh, partially because there isn't one. So what we need to do is look in our placed actors window here. Or so if we go to window and look for place actors, we need to search for a nav mesh. And we're looking for the nav mesh bounds volume. Now this creates a volume, a kind of box, and everything within that box is going to be checked for how navigable it is, basically whether it's flat, whether it's not too steep, basically whether there's a wall, you can't go through walls, you can't walk over walls because they're too steep. So if we drag in a nav mesh bounds volume and just bring it here and just put it slightly through the floor so that this allows the floor to be part of that navigation calculation, then what we've got to do is enable the visibility of nav meshes. You can do this by clicking on the show button in the top left of your viewport and then clicking on navigation, or using the shortcut P. So I'm going to use the shortcut P and selecting, well, you don't even have to select the bounds volume. You can instantly see this green mesh has appeared within the bounds volume, which is telling us this is a walkable area. So if we had our enemy within this area and his target was also within the area, then it could find a path along this mesh. Now, let's have a look at what happens if we move this to where there's an obstacle. You can see that the mesh kind of cuts out around this obstacle. So what we actually want to do is have this volume encompass the whole of our level, and you could choose not to, or just do it in certain segments, but the easiest way is just to increase the bounds of this volume, which you can do if you go over to the details pane on the right. There's the brush settings, and you can change the size of the brush like so. You can see we can make it larger, we can make it wider, and it goes red when it's being recalculated. You can see it's doing that building nav mesh, and the larger it's going to be, the harder it is going to be to build the nav mesh, the longer it's going to take. But you can see that this is working. It's cutting out the corridors, it's cutting out the obstacles that we can't walk around. The second part of this puzzle is having our AI able to do its routing algorithms on this mesh. Now let's go ahead and open the BP Shooter AI controller, because I want to show you something that is in here. I'm going to open up the full blueprint editor here and have a look. Here there is a component called the path following component. That component is responsible for finding a nav mesh and then basically allowing us to create paths and follow them and move along them automatically. So we don't have to build any of that functionality in. All we have to do is use a function that's available on our AI controller. If you go and search for the AI controller.h and look for the move to function, then let's do move to with an open brackets. Then there's a couple of options here. We've got one that takes a move to request. There are some other options here too, but they actually go by a different name now in later versions of Unreal. We've got Move to Actor and we've got Move to Location, which have the same distinction as our setting focus. You can set focus to something that's moving like an actor, or you can set focus to a specific destination, such as a waypoint in your patrol route, for example, might be a Move to Location. So I'd like you to have a go at attempting a move to as your challenge. So get a nav mesh in your scene, make it cover as much of the scene as you need to for you to be able to move around and have the AI follow you in all locations. And then call that move to either move to actor or move to location, you decide which, in begin play to get the AI chasing us. So pause the video and have a go. Okay, welcome back. So let's give this a shot. So first things first, we're going to have, I'm going to be using a move to actor, and we're going to have to set the goal actor. So let's go over to our shooter AI controller.cpp, and in there, begin play, we can do move to actor, and we've got an actor already, the player pawn, which we've got from the last lecture. And let's just have a look. Are there any other useful properties here? We've got an acceptance radius. At the moment, it has no acceptance radius. Basically, it gets as close as it possibly can. I think that might be a little bit encroaching. I'm going to give it an acceptance radius of 2 meters, so it will try to get within 2 meters of us. So let's go ahead and build that. And once that's complete, go over into the engine and let's have a look. I'm going to not expand the bounds volume here, just to give you a taste of why we need the bounds volume in the first place. So let's start off with an Alt-P. And here we are. We are on the nav mesh, and this guy has moved towards us automatically. But if I leave that nav mesh, he can no longer get any closer to me because he can't find the route. He can't find a way of getting to me. So what we're going to do is in fact, I'm not sure that was what's actually going on here, because probably what's happening is that he's getting within the acceptance radius of me and then not trying again. So one way to check that would be to just remove this acceptance radius and recompile. And then we can go over and see if that's what's going on. So yeah, he comes right up to me. If I move away, well, he basically forgot that command. So what we want to do is do this in tick, because basically once he reaches me, he gives up on the idea of chasing me. So let's move this over to tick. This isn't the ideal way to do it, but that's what we're going to do just for now. I'm going to copy the signature of tick from our actor.h, and I know that it goes in the public section, so I'm going to create a public section at the top. Copy in the signature, make it an override just for safety, and then implement it over in the C++ and move our move actor into tick, and the acceptance radius still of 2 meters. Let's try this now. And obviously it's complaining that we don't have a player pawn over there, so let's go and make sure we're getting hold, repeating this line that gets hold of the first player pawn over in our tick as well. And now we should be able to test it out properly. Do an Alt-P, go into the world. He comes and gets us within 2 meters. I move away from him. And oh, look at that. He's not even aiming at me properly this time. But he is trying to follow along. But as soon as I leave that nav mesh, he no longer knows how to find me. So let's fix that up, shall we? We're going to go to our nav mesh, bounds volume. If I can select it, there we go. And then we want to really zoom out here to try and encompass the whole of our level. It looks a bit janky on the outside, this level, but that's just the way things often work, is that you build the level to be viewed from the inside, not from the outside. So let's make this much wider. Let's make it much taller so that it encompasses all of the level, and just drag it out so that all the extents of the level here are covered. Just make it a little bit wider, a little bit longer too, and just make sure all of this is encompassed fully. And you can see the green has appeared as it's calculated the nav mesh. And let's just make sure that the nav mesh is going down low enough that it's covering the lowest extents of our map. It seems to be covering it now. So if we go ahead and we can hide our nav mesh now that we have set it all up, and we can do an Alt-P to go ahead and play, and he can find us and follow us pretty much anywhere that we go within this level. you can see that our trusty little servant is following along behind us wherever we choose to go. He is just tailing us and trailing us, which is very annoying, but he is able to do that. Awesome stuff. So in this lecture, we have seen how we can create our nav meshes and how we can use them to get our AI to follow us around the level. Next lecture, we're going to loop back round to this aiming, fix the bug, and check line of sight so that we don't necessarily always chase the player around. See you there. And I've just noticed one silly little mistake that I have made here, which is that I'm not calling to super : tick. So that is actually why when you sometimes you get these weird unexplained bugs. If you're not calling to super, then things don't always work as expected. That's why the focus had stopped working, because essentially we had disabled tick on our AI controller, which is no good. If you enable that, then everything should work as normal with the setting focus.